President Roosevelt is the
Welcome to Stories from the Attic. My name is Greg Van Antwerp. I'm your host, and my co-host is...
My name is Martin Blanco.
Martin, thank you so much for joining me again on this program, as you always do. And I appreciate the fact that, you don't have to be here, but you want to be here.
I don't have to be here. Yes, I do. I'm blinking right now.
Right.
Rescue me.
Yeah, rescue me.
No, I don't have to be here.
The Morse code. Yes.
Nothing or no one is forcing me to be here. I come of my own volition, and I always have a great time.
It's coming from inside the studio, Martin.
Help me.
Get out.
Help me.
Help me. Call this number. No, really. You know what? I always say
tell my mother I love her.
I could not be doing this podcast if I didn't have you in the other chair, because it would just look silly to have an empty chair there.
That's true.
So as a seat filler, you really have. You excel.
Yeah.
You really excel.
No. I'm gifted. Some say in that regard. Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
But so. Go ahead.
Well, we haven't seen each other for a while. I know you were taking, you're having a nice little trip.
I had a sabbatical, right, to New Hampshire.
Which is great. And then I got very busy with, my other podcast, but also this variety show that I'm involved with in Newtown, the Flagpole Radio Cafe. And we just had a show last Saturday, of which Greg is sort of involved in too. He's part of the family of that. So it's been a little intense. So we have not been able to meet here for this purpose. So I have to ask, what have you been up to? What have you stumbled upon? What have you unearthed?
When I'm not running around the stage with a camera in front of you, I'm running around the studio with a camera in front of you.
Yeah.
No, I'm in the basements and attics of America. Really, every weekend is another discovery. We're already teasing a potential show for coming up, because there's something happening closer to the Hudson, which I'm going to try and entice you to join me on.
Okay.
But since it hasn't happened yet, no point in telling that story.
No.
But just this past week, actually, I thought, maybe the sales have calmed down a little bit and there's not going to be a whole lot. But then I get a call from one of the many companies that I seem to owe money, because they keep calling me and asking me for stuff. So, but apparently they said, hey, we're working on a house in Danbury, Connecticut. Would you come and help us set it up?
Okay.
And so, I'm like, well, I just basically, in the middle of doing dishes, covering the honey-do list, raking leaves, boom, out I went. And sure enough,
you had me at we're having,
We're having, right. and these folks are very nice folks. I've worked with them before. The sale is currently being set up right now. Although this isn't a live show, I don't want to tease it right now, because it wouldn't be fair to them. I will say this also, because since I'm not going to mention their names, they're going through a bit of a challenge now, which is an interesting challenge with some of these sales. Now, the house is a hoard. It's basically the daughters are recovering the family manse, the estate, and are clearing it out and want to sell the house. But it is full of their lives, their parents' lives for the past 60 years.
60 years, and a lot of stuff can be collected.
Yep,
acquired.
Just like we know that anytime you see an American using a video camera, we don't ever seem to own tripods. Nobody ever seems to know how to dust after the age of 80. There's just the place is a mess, and they just they let it go. But I'm not airing people's dirty laundry. I'm just airing their dust.
Okay.
So we're opening windows and letting it out. But the point is that in amongst that, we're trying to find the history. So. Yesterday, I'm actually up in the attic, and in an interesting engineering situation, which I haven't seen before. Very nice attic, lots of space, fairly new central air conditioning system.
Okay,
huge vents going through the attic. But what have they done? They have installed this massive unit with all its vents and not removed the boxes from the eaves of the attic. So as you look underneath the vents and over the vents, you can see boxes that were stored and were never moved. So somebody had the grand idea to say, either the family said, oh, don't worry about it, it's all junk, just leave it there, or the person that installed it said, yeah, I'll move the boxes, and then didn't. And all that stuff is back there. And I'm like, and so, basically all they have to do, like handing Forrest Gump a flashlight to go down into a Viet Cong tunnel, they hand me a flashlight and say, Greg, attic, and I'm like, boom, I'm there.
This was the scene that was edited from Forrest Gump. It's on the cutting room floor.
Exactly. Yeah. But there I went, crawling like the snake that I am, on over these things and trying to not put my foot through the ceiling, and then underneath these things. And sure enough, there is vintage games. There's Matchbox race sets. There's my favorite Barbie dolls, some of which have been chewed on by mice. But
is there Malibu Barbie?
Malibu Barbie, the Skipper
Barbie,
Skipper
Barbie,
Skipper, the one who goes from adolescence to a woman if you just lift her arm. No, anyway, the whole point is that there was just
I don't know what that is, but you know what? I don't want to. So
it's not proper. We'll edit that one out. Anyway, the point is that there were quite a selection of vintage toys that were trapped up there, and so using basically a clam rake and me, we managed to get these things out.
You happen to have a clam rake available. You said, what would be helpful? A clam rake. We have one right here.
Well, please go to the Urban Archaeologist store on my website, and there you'll see a clam rake for sale, and wondering, why would I want a clam rake? Well, you're going to go into an attic or a basement.
The question answers itself.
The question answers, exactly.
That sounds like the plot for Toy Story 6.
Yeah, right.
Now, they're only up to 5, but the one after 5... the toys are going to be trapped in an attic.
Someone's got to come rescue them.
Andy, who's now 60 years old, Andy's going to come in with a clam rake to save Buzz and Woody.
Can I play the 60-year-old Andy?
Yes, yes, you can.
It's just amazing what you see up in these attics. And we all do it. We all don't dust. We all don't use tripods when we should. And we all don't clear out our attics before someone installs a massive central air conditioning system.
I'm guilty of 2 of those. Wait, what are the tripods?
It's a joke I used to make about America's Funniest Home Videos. If you ever watched that show, no one on that show ever used a tripod to shoot anything. It was all handheld and shaky and jerky, and then they turned it into Law and Order, and that seemed to be shaky and jerky using a camera.
That's what inspired
was
Law and Order,
right?
Yeah. All right, I'm guilty of one of those things.
All right, down to 1. That's good.
Okay.
Well,
see, I'm not that bad of a.
Yeah, I absolve
citizen.
you of
Thank
your
you.
sins. If I can.
Do I have to perform a penance?
A penance. Yeah. Well, you brought me cookies from the Bronx, so, or Brooklyn, or was it Bronx?
The Bronx.
The Bronx. Oh, good.
From DeLillo's Pastry Shop on 187th Street.
This episode brought to you by DeLillo's Pastry Shop. There we go. That's them
for the finest in Italian cookies and pastries and beverages.
This is, as well as audio. This is a video podcast.
Okay.
If you go to the
look at the nice box, but with the red and white string, which I won't say is gone forever, but harder and harder to come by.
I have a great buddy of mine from college, and I basically grew up with. His name's Tony Capice, and I'm pretty sure he flossed with this string. I mean, really, it was so meaningful to him that
put it to good use. They recycled everything back in the day.
Exactly.
Well, he's your floss. Thank you, Nona.
That's not what that's for? Oh, it's to hold the box together. I thought after you had a cookie, clean your teeth.
There is an excellent bakery in Bethel.
Is there?
Where I live. I think it's called Verano's Bakery, Italian.
I see.
And they have the traditional stuff.
Shameless
plug. Very, very good. But you know what they don't have? They don't have the red and white string. She uses a little Scotch tape, which, by the way, very effective.
Very
easy,
effective.
Probably. But I'm like,
white string. Get you some, I'm going to, at some estate sale, in some basement, there's going to be this aluminum tube, and it's going to be like with a little hole sticking out, and everyone's going to go, "Oh, I have no idea what that is," and I'd be like, "Oh, I know exactly what that is," and there'll be string inside it, and I will
for the red and white string. Okay.
That's right.
Fair enough.
So the big story today.
What is the story today?
Well, again, the only way to get find hidden history, and really, which is my goal, to find it and rescue it, is you have to go to the filthiest places. You do. You just have to. I mean, Martin, you're no stranger to that. You and I have traipsed and explored the goriest, grossest basement.
We did, and you went deeper than I did. I was there, but you went to the lowest depths.
No shame.
You went to the highest point of the roof. You in all the buildings on the property, you've covered it all. I went in the main house and sort of surveyed, but I did not have the courage or fortitude to go to the depths.
Well,
you have,
just like swimming, never go in an attic without a buddy. Because and I've often been told that by the companies that I work for that will hand me the keys and say, you can go and do what you want, but you keep in touch with me, because if I don't hear from you, I'll be worried that you got yourself trapped.
And that's actually smart.
It is right. Like going caving, it's the same thing. Don't go too far. That a good scream wouldn't bring someone to your door and say, I think someone's trapped in your attic again. But so that was basically the situation that we ran into at this.
I have to. Do you know the great late cartoon writer, not comic strip, Gahan Wilson?
Oh God, yeah, sure. Like the famous one is the frog with the card outside the kitchen doors, and the people eating are looking, and the on the wall is frog legs are 25 cents, and he's there coming out with the two weights and pushing himself on the cart. He doesn't have his legs.
Yes.
That's Gahan.
Well, the one that you made me think of the caption was, "Something went horribly wrong in the chimney," and what it is there is a crusty, dried out, almost but not quite skeletal figure in a Santa Claus suit that the chimney sweep was getting out. And I thought, even as a kid of like 12 or 13, I'm like, only Gahan Wilson could think of it.
Only that stuff.
Yeah. But that could be
iconic.
That could be you.
That could be me
someday, not necessarily in the Santa Claus
That could
costume,
be me. I would probably be holding a mechanical Santa from the 40s in that chimney, and that's what someone would find.
Plausible.
Mm-hmm. Very possible. Very possible. Not that it hasn't happened already, but it could have. So at this house, we've covered this in another program. There was, some serious corporate history and papers and documents to prove that this family goes way back to the 1860s and the formation of was it Western Electric?
No, Westinghouse.
Westinghouse. Oh my God, that's right. Thanks for the correction. I knew you were here for a reason.
That's why I'm here. And that's it. Good night, everyone.
Good night. That's it. His job is
served my purpose.
Brought the cookies. Corrected me when he did.
The cookies.
He brought the cookies.
And I made the necessary correction. I can go now.
Just so you know, in order to do this podcast, I had to accept the cookies. Okay. So at this house, again, literally these points of history that have been forgotten and left for dead. When it comes down to the final hour, and literally it does, because there's a dumpster outside and the house needs to be sold, so everything that isn't taken goes into the dumpster.
And now they're not wasting time. Now it's like we're on the clock.
And it's like we're talking the French word oublier, forget it, it's gone. And, it's just done. So, when I'm in that last roundup of being able to go through the house, I made a sweep of papers that were in the dining room that stuff were piled on top of the dining room table. You remember, it was a mess of books and things. And so I managed to just go, you know what? Some of this looks like it might be interesting just by the age of the paper, and I scooped it all up, and it literally took me until, and that was months ago. July, and it took me until now to kind of sort through, and there's a couple of really good stories in there. We're going to focus on one today, and the reason it was fascinating me because all I had to do was see the date, and it was what's the date of that paper you have in your hand right there, Martin?
19th November. 1915.
So we're really just at 1 year into the World War I.
Yeah.
So once I saw that, I was like, you know what? I think we have World War I history. And so I kind of go looking around for the common papers that might be part of a story. And so I grabbed them, and then really I finally sorted out the story today, and with a little bit of research. So we're going to read a couple of letters today, and then because this is a really good story, and it's just a small snapshot of really first-person perspective, almost. Really first-person perspective of what it was like to be in the trenches. So
this is the embodiment of primary source stuff.
Exactly, right. And that's why it's so precious and so important to history. Now, what we have here really is the story of a soldier in an Irish soldier in World War I, and he is he's at the front lines, and but there's a problem. He's actually gone missing. And so we kind of pick up with a family member, right, giving us trying to find out what has actually gone wrong. Now,
and he couldn't just text, or send an email,
right?
Or even couldn't do that.
No, it's not even smoke signals. No.
Okay.
So this is his. Who's this person to him? Writing? Is this? This is actually the first letter announcing.
This is what sort of kicks
this.
Yeah,
we might be
off.
Missing the first letter, but go ahead and read.
This is where we pick up, like the Iliad. We come into the story midway, perhaps.
Already in progress.
We now return to our program. Already in progress. Okay, I'll do my best. I have my contact lenses in again, so apologies if it's not as smooth as we'd like, but I'll do my best. 19th November 1915. Dear Mrs. Shillington, I am deeply grieved to have such bad news. I'm going to say one other thing too.
What's that?
There are some, I don't want to say typos, but improper language. I'm not going to fix that.
No,
so if it sounds weird, believe it or not, it's not me stumbling over words or whatnot. It's the way it's written in, and that's how I'm going to present it to you. So, all right. Apologies for the delay. 19th November, 1915. Dear Mrs. Shillington, I am deeply grieved to have such bad news to report. It appears that your husband went out this morning at 12:15 a.m. on patrol duty with one NCO, Sergeant Lowry, and 5 men to reconnoiter a certain road between our and the enemy's trenches. Good and plucky gentleman as he was, he took all risks himself and went ahead on his own, leaving remainder of his party behind. Apparently, he thought all was clear and returned some way till he found his patrol and motioned them to come on. Almost at once, rapid fire was opened, and your gallant husband fell forward. Sergeant Lowry states, he then threw a bomb, and the Germans again opened fire. The party that retired, I apologize, the party then retired, I fancy in great confusion, back to their trenches. Major McCall at once went out another patrol in an endeavor to find him, but thought they went to the next spot where he fell, they would find no trace of him. This looks as if he had been wounded and carried off by the enemy, and I sincerely trust that this may be so. This is all that I know at present, but should I be able to get any more reliable information, of course, I'll let you know at once. I have just got all he had with him in the trenches, and I'll have these with his valise forwarded you as soon as possible. I can assure you that you have my most heartfelt sympathy in your great sorrow, but I still think he may be an only wounded and a prisoner. It was only yesterday I was talking to him, and he was as cheery as possible. All ranks will regret him very much. He was so popular, and the regiment can ill afford to lose such as he. Believe me, very sincerely yours, PP Chute. Or Chute.
PP Chute. Yeah, PP Chute. That was, that's something that just, when I first saw this letter, I was like, to see someone sign off on a letter, and again, this letter, and all this will be put up, so you should be reading this now along with us, because I will put it up.
Just follow the bouncing ball.
Follow the bouncing right, exactly.
My dear Mrs. Shillington.
So you may catch the audio version on Spotify, but the video version will be on YouTube. So, you see PP Chute, and I saw that, and I almost set this aside thinking, oh, you know what, this is just one of those joke letters from early 20th century, and who would sign and it's not signed. They would say, who's PP Chute? Come on, that's
that can't possibly be a real name.
The third grader in me, the Jimmy Neeners in me would just go, that's
forever
not
the third grader.
That's not right. Now I was able to do some research, and someone got back to me, my crack team out on the internet.
The crack team.
and it turns out that it's actually PT Chute.
That's interesting.
So it's funny that this is written. It looks like a draft. It looks like a copy of a letter. Yeah. So someone may have retyped this. It's so strange, but it is a real letter.
But it got sent and saved or something.
Exactly. And then so what we have is PT Chute was actually I think born in 1856. He dies. Much later in the mid 20th century, so he is a venerable. He's the one to report on this, and this is the right information coming from him. And he is an Irish Fusilier. That's his place in the battalion. So. Now we've got another letter.
There was another letter in the same packet here. So
a little later on, what's the date of this one?
Letter. Okay, this is a letter written by Mrs. Shillington. Her name is Bertha Shillington. It's dated December 2nd, 1915. My dear Uncle Tom, do you know anyone or have any influence with the ambassador or any of the attachés at the embassy at Berlin? I have just heard if we could get anyone there to take a personal interest in Courtney, it would be of the greatest service to his. So, of course, to us. And by the way, that his was a him. This is my eyes with my contacts in.
That's right.
And the faint type. So, the greatest service to him. So, of course, to us, if it were possible for some of them to see him and report how he is and what he wants in the way of clothing and food. I hope to hear direct from him before long, and he will be allowed to write twice a month, and I can write him twice a month. He will be much better treated if he is a prisoner with the Saxons who took him, and we hope for this. Of course, if there is any expense about hunting him up, I will only be too glad to know. Love to you all. In haste, affectionately yours, Bertha W. Shillington. And then there is no postscript, but she has written underneath it all, I have written Mrs. Lane about this too. But that is a postscript, but it's not identified as
so
such.
This is, very typical for I guess at this point, a British subject, but an Irish descent, asking for a cousin or an uncle or somebody who knows somebody higher up. And again, the civility, although we're at war, of being able to contact someone at the Berlin consulate to get word.
Right.
This is what I'm finding with my own family's history, is that my grandfather was treated very well as a prisoner of war. But again, what I love about this, finding these mystery papers, is this rabbit hole of history. As soon as you read the word Saxon, I was like, what century is this?
Are we in? Because we immediately thought of the English Saxons of, I think it's like the 7th century through maybe the 1066 through the 11th century.
Right. Okay. I don't want. Yeah,
that's where my brain went to.
Yeah,
but I guess there's other Saxons.
Well, I don't want. That's the thing, is I don't want to go too deep and reveal how much I don't know about European history. But so I was. Again,
we could be here all day with how much we don't know about European history.
But the next letter will actually give us a little bit of information about that.
Okay.
And
wait, there's another letter.
There's another letter.
Another piece to the puzzle.
Another piece to the puzzle.
Interesting. Okay.
So someone is writing back to dearest Aunt Bertha. Dearest must be a family member, but we don't know exactly who it is. Because really, if you're going to refer to Aunt Bertha and you don't call her dearest, you might not get a Christmas present.
That's true.
So it says, just a hasty note to let you know that the awful nightmare is at an end. And says C, but I think they mean Courtney Shillington, who was the wounded, is safe with the Saxons. Safe with the Saxons. Again, not knowing anything about the Saxons.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can be safe with Saxons, but I guess you can. If hey, I'll donate something to the Saxons if I find out they're good people.
Okay.
If he was wounded, it must be slight, and I hope it may not be long before we hear from him. Thank God he is safe till the end of the war. At any rate, from the bullets and the shells. I had letters from officers this morning saying that saying on the 27th that they saw a notice nailed to a tree between the trenches on which they could read through their telescopes. It says, Lieutenant Shillington, a prisoner in good health. Now, the visual on this, it paints a picture in my head. If you can imagine the trench warfare that's going on in World War I, again, you stick your head up and you really...
not the joke, but people stick your head up, boom.
And then there's that no man's land in between the trenches where there often were, had to go and crawl under the barbed wire and maybe try and attack. But there are stories of civility between these battalions on either side, and the Saxons were known for being fairly non-violent in that there was a point during the war where between them and the Scottish where it was almost agreed that if you don't shoot, neither will we. I mean, if you shoot, we'll shoot, but if you don't shoot, neither will we. And they actually held off, not doing anything. And of course, if you haven't heard about the story of on Christmas Day, where there's a soccer game between both sides, where they just stop the war and play soccer.
If they were smart, they would have. Okay, winner wins the war.
Right. It's like, let's rock paper scissors. Forget the guns. But they're again. But
so if I'm understanding right, so they left the note.
They left a note. Yeah.
They left a note.
So,
they identified. Courtney Shillington.
Yeah.
And they left a note.
And
We got him.
The letter that you read basically said that, well, we went out and there was gunfire, machine gun fire.
Yeah.
We threw a bomb. Unfortunately, your husband fell forward and was injured. And then we were chased away. And then when we went back, his body is not there. And you're thinking, oh, well, what have they done? They've, they bayoneted him, they garroted him, whatever, and he's dead, or he's been taken prisoner. But in this case, no, he has been taken prisoner, but they've left a nice note. The Saxons have left a note on a tree. What tree? The right one? I mean, how did they even know?
And they right. And not only give the thing to leave the note, but then this regiment noticed the note, read it. Yeah. And then conveyed this information, so it got back to the
just to let you know. Right, he's with the Saxons as a prisoner, and and I think they're taking pretty good care of him. I mean, and like, oh, okay, and you wonder,
they're playing pinochle and drinking doors. I don't know.
Again, at that point, you really get a sense of that nobody really sees the sense in war, and I always think I learned from watching the movie, very famous Adolph Manchu, The Grand Illusion. Very early sound picture. The grand illusion is really that the illusion was that the war would end someday or sooner, and then you just keep holding on to this illusion, and that's kind of it, because all the people that are fighting it also really don't want to. Aren't aggressive against the enemy. They've been trained to be. They're defending or they're stopping an attack, and so you can tell that at some point when you get down to the front lines, it's not a breakdown. It's kind of a common understanding between both sides that if we just actually not shoot, maybe they won't shoot either. I'll stop punching and maybe he'll stop hitting me. And in most fights that doesn't happen. They actually hit you when you go down and the fight's over.
But it does speak to where's the rancor? This isn't
right.
This does not seem a war about competing philosophies or organizing myths of a society or control of resources or any of these things where people typically, rightly or wrongly, would die for. What are they fighting for? And they're sick of fighting. Well, they're not. They're giving peace a chance. I don't know. They're giving civility a chance.
Again, right at the mano a mano level, there's a sense of humility there that says, if you don't want this, neither do we. But I guess we have to, so we will. But we'd rather not. But anyway, so there's a little bit more of this letter here.
Okay.
So it's
read on.
Yeah.
Read on.
So he's with the Saxons.
Yeah.
And they are much more humane than the Prussians or the Bavarians. So that's really where it gives us the history lesson. So what you have in the German Empire are really three states. Or you have the Prussians, you have the Bavarians, and you have the Saxons. And the Saxons have their own sense of history. They're really just a separate state that is just under the German Empire, but really not like, so it's kind of like, well, it's the German Empire, but, there's them, and then there's those guys, but then there's us. And it's like, so we're not really interested in, like, this really kind of violent thing where we can just, hey, shoot our guns because we like the sound. We are not really,
They're governed by a different operating system.
Right. And a different history that kind of says that at one point they were more connected to maybe the Western Europe than to the Central Europe, in which they kind of possess. So, but anyway, so the one of the officers who wrote and with going on patrol during the night to try and get to the notice, and he said he would let me know any further information I may get. And the letter basically goes on and on like that. I mean, basically it says, we're really hopeful, but we know that he's alive and he's a prisoner.
That's something, yeah.
And that's a sense of hope, because that first letter that you read is kind of like, hey, I'm so terribly sorry to tell you that his body's gone.
Yeah.
and if that were a World War II letter, you'd kind of get the sense that he's not coming,
and while he wants to be hopeful, I don't want to say it rings hollow, but just based on a good wish.
Right.
But now we've got something concrete.
And the very last piece of paper that I found was actually and I almost didn't recognize it. It's a postcard with very fine writing. And I'm not going to read all this fine writing. I'll actually put it up there and maybe voice it over.
Once upon a time, 2 or 3 generations or 4 people would print
and
that tiny and that neatly, too.
And with a dip pen.
Yeah.
Not with a ballpoint pen. We're talking 1915 here. So, or 1916. Well, this is a dip pen. You can imagine the kind of detail someone can get. What a fine pen or great penmanship that you really needed to have at that age and time. So basically, what's fascinating about this is actually from Courtney Shillington.
Wow!
And I figured out that because of the German writing on the postcard, he's sent it from a Saxon hospital, and here he is in the hospital, wounded, but he's not feeling a lot of pain. He's with 20 other English soldiers, but he's doing okay. He got the parcel that you sent. Thanks for the chocolates. Thanks for this, and give my love to everybody. I'm sorry I couldn't write more.
He got his chocolates.
Yeah, that was, the civility that they were allowed to send or receive. It depended on what part of where you were held, but in some cases you could get all sorts of packages and wonderful goodies, even a tennis racket my grandfather got to play tennis.
Wait, when your grandfather was a prisoner of war?
Was a prisoner of war in World War I, yeah.
He got a tennis racket.
Yeah, tennis. No, they treated officers. This gentleman he's a lieutenant.
Okay.
And really that's where most soldiers went from being on the front. If they could get into officers training school, OTC, they would become lieutenants, and then they would be able to kind of lead a small troop. But then they also became fodder for capture. And I don't want to say that I just want to say that typically officers were treated better. And again, a sort of trade-off. You treat our officers well, we'll treat your officers well. So he's able to write this letter. He's able to say, hey, regretfully, I couldn't write sooner. I'm sorry you had to wait so long for this information, but I'm here. I'm getting better. And eventually, he'll either be kept until the war is over, which is 3 more years, or 2 more years.
Oh, my goodness.
But he will be safe and out of harm's way in some hopes. Again, no prediction there, or he may be in a prisoner trade at some point. But so
please send a tennis racket and golf clubs. I don't know.
But to me, that this whole story focuses around that notice, tacked to a tree by the enemy to let the other side know that hey, we have your guy. He's a prisoner. And it's not like we got him. No, it's really kind of to say, hey, this guy's name. He's a prisoner, and he's in good health.
We're taking care of him.
Yeah, we're taking care of him. So, we'll send something. Anyway, so that really wraps it up for today. I think what's really wild is that these kinds of stories exist in attics and basements, and sadly, dumps and dumpsters everywhere.
Landfills everywhere, yeah.
So if you have the compunction at all to take on this challenge of trying to uncover history yourself, I would encourage you deeply to do it, because every weekend and every time it rains, I always think there's another pile of old papers that has just turned back into dust or mush. But
what a great story!
But what a great story. So please look for this on YouTube. And I just want to say real quick that my co-host Martin, you have your podcast going steady and strong. And what's that podcast called again?
My other podcast is called I Wish I Were a Prosciutto. And you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeart Podcasts, soon to be on other platforms. So check it out if you like good conversation on Italian food and family stories from days gone by. So a little glimpse into the world in the 1940s and 50s.
Sounds delicious. I think it's definitely worth a listen to. I want to make sure that everybody's podcast gets all the love it deserves.
Thank you. I listen to a lot of podcasts. We can plug them. I love them.
Exactly. Right, favorites and right. And by the way, we'll be looking for more endorsements or free cookies from the DeLillo
Pastry, 187th Street, Bronx, New York.
It's pasta salad.
And there's only like half a dozen other very good pastry places and bread bakeries.
Any others that would like to deliver cookies to our doorstep? That would
none
really
of them do that. But you have to go down there.
But all right.
Well, you enjoy. Thank you, Greg.
That's it for today, and thank you so much for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Martin.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
President Roosevelt is the